let's just talk about this new year of leadership, okay? So if we're here to talk about the next generation in leadership, things are changing, right? But I'm just interested really in what's different, do you think, about this year? Wrongness, or is you just, yeah, let's go on.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I think, oh, Joy, sorry.
You could.
Yeah. So I think what's different now, I suppose there's many challenges for leaders now in organizations. So if you think about sort of your start out, and anyway, I don't want to be academic today, but you sort of pass the analysis. So, there's political, economical, social, technical changes. And honestly, leaders in organizations now are adopting new ways of working, and they're having to grapple with new technologies, to grapple with AI, obviously. They need to understand it. They need to integrate it into their teams. They also need to be resilient because there's an awful lot of change coming at people. But in addition to that, they need to empathize with them, obviously. So bring the people with them in the organization, I think, is one of the most important things. So in these times of change, but of course, with all of that and all of that responsibility on top of responsibility for implementing strategies to sustainability, for example, and then the regulatory environment, for example, in our industry is changing rapidly. So all of those things, I think, bring challenges for leaders. So, for example, things like mental health challenges, both for themselves and for their teams. So I think leaders need to be very people-oriented going forward. They need to be able to deal with all of these challenges. They need to be able to give purpose to the teams. They need to be there for them. They need to remain agile. They need to remain resilient with themselves. I think we talked about it a bit more later on, but I suppose I see the role of middle managers in organizations. A lot has been written about, maybe AI and how to streamline more efficiently. And, there's been some sort of studies that have suggested that, taking out a layer of middle managers, might help to streamline things more effectively. But actually, I think the role of middle managers has never been more pivotal or important in organizations. But we need to say a bit more about that.
Full time.
Yeah.
That's right. I added that the word I got a few weeks ago, at least, are what the biggest challenges for organizations at the moment in the next couple of years. Disinformation. It's scrutiny. It is transparency. So the leaders of current businesses, everybody's watching. Could be internal, could be investors, could be banks, social media. Everybody's watching what they're doing. So I think there's a huge challenge. So you used to just get on with it. Some businesses will let essentially do their own thing, but sort of what that level of scrutiny and transparency. So I think that disinformation, there's so many things going on. Like you're judged on your performance on a day, even on an hourly basis in an organization. So that constant pressure to perform and to be seen to doing the right thing or not, the case may be, and being free hours is really challenging. There's also the level of data, data decision making that's also challenging. There's also the human side is a given, but that's just that the constant you're on all the time, and I give them stress out, but it's also temporary to watch. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for us in your region.
Going back with the experts here. Where do I stand?
I'll see the next question first.
For me, I think, I'm a leader. I see myself as a leader of the team, but also, John Kouture has 100,000 kids to part, so I see a responsibility that I have to them and the message in that and the way to by example and lead with them. Really, the challenge for me as a leader, there's some bingoes. If you look at the progression in leadership thinking, the tribal thinking, local thinking, global thinking is the one that most of us now would be concerned with. But I think even in the next 5 years, universal thinking, I think this idea, people laugh at the Elon Musk idea of Mars, but is the world going to become a completely different place in the next 5 to 10 years where tourism outside of this planet exists? And then what kind of industry grow up around that? And the mindset of the people who grow up, like kids were born into the world where, if you go back in 1492, kids were born into the world with thought they look at that bad. in the year 2050, there are people that warn the world and think that we just intergalactically travel. And as leaders, the speed of change is so rapid. How do we keep up with it? And how do we approach it with what I would call an on-learning mindset? Because if we approach it with the current lens that we have right now, then we'll be the Kodaks of the mass.
That's really is a sort of input. Yeah, man. The other thing that also brings up your point from the very start is that it's the workforce is changing. Their expectations are changing. So I know one I want to work for a leader that that cares, that sort of that actually wants to do the right thing, and that's gives me a drive to show up to deliver what I want to do. So we want to work for leaders that actually stand for something as well. So that's also the challenge for a leader, that they need to actually have that purpose themselves. Yeah, that alliance. Which
I think that theme of purpose is that theme of purpose, I think, is really important actually as well. And I suppose just to say that board these are diverse teams as well. We know they have diverse teams. It's better for decision making, and it's better for collaboration. It's better for generating ideas. And at Cassie, at Go Get a Room shows, we actually have 25 different nationalities working together every day, and we're very proud of that rich, diverse organisation that we have, and everybody's multilingual. And there's two of our team, in fact, here today in the room, and I think they attest to that. The other thing is actually the leaders' case intelligence in terms of hybrid and remote working. So we have models in Cassie of hybrid working and remote working from abroad. So that allows our people to both work remotely from home, but also to work remotely from abroad for up to 8 weeks per year. So that flexibility is something that our people really value. Of course, I suppose a tally for leaders, keep people engaged, keep people together and motivated, and just a purpose point. That's something we really drive home at Cassie and Novak, because people want to have purpose now. It's really important for people to have purpose. So, you'll read in research like, what organizations really have purpose and what gets people out of bed on a wet Wednesday or to come to work. At Cassie, we are in predator protection insurance. So they operate over 6 countries. We have the full value chain of insurance here in Declan, but we always tell our people, our purpose is protecting people in life's fragile moments, right? That's a very human purpose. So it's simply because a dead own family, if somebody can't earn money anymore due to illness or injury, our teams are there to protect people in life's fragile moments. And we frequently get feedback from customers, from our end customers, to our CEO and to our teams, where they say, I want to thank the people in Cassie for how they handled my claim, for paying out the claim when I needed it in the most vulnerable time of my life, and for the way in which they did that. And what we could say in Cassie is that everybody in the value chain, so our actuaries, our compliance, our risks, our HR, our operations, everybody has a part in that purpose, and that purpose is really important.
But just a couple of points that were made. They've got some of our own research, very recent research, published very soon. Offer compensation benefits, you should have posted that the biggest reason would be to say an organisation. So come out of buying to journalism and management here. I think we're going into this technology era of technical, those who use us anymore. Technical people wait another 10, 15 years. Basically in 10 years, AI is going to be more intelligent than all of the world's population. Was to give you a sense of some of the research out there. I want to come to a whole area of skills now. But I might start with you, because obviously you're working with the next generation. It's okay if you're trying to kick saturation, there's all sorts of stuff coming at us. What's your capability in terms of that fit, that mindset that we have? I was always interviewed her and a doctor, and months ago he talked about new skills around being comfortable managing uncertainty. This is something uncertain. Just have to get comfortable with that. So that's an idea that most of us would try to fight against uncertainty, as opposed to actually be uncertain. So I'm interested at that broader level. What do you see for this?
Yeah, so that's a very spent after we get MIT to compete in Masters there. If we were doing this, actually just the future of evolution. But And it fits in as this with your saying, are you going to be redundant? Our machine's going to be, or intelligence going to be, and the way it's put past I'm very interested. But he said, look, first evolution of work. You hire people based on a physicality. So you had a farm, you had to harvest the farm, you hired people who both were physically able, and you threw 20 people out, 30 people out, 40 people, until you had mechanization. And then one tractor did, he just ride a horsepower as a measure. And he says, so then the first evolution of work is when we moved from physicality to mental ability. And so we then have machines do the physical part, and so we hire people based on an umbrella, macro level, their intelligence level. We measured that with IQ. So the average person might be an IQ of 110, and you were hired in the skills that had a lawyer, doctor, and so on. He said, we're now at the next evolution of work, where ChatGPT has an IQ level of Einstein, we're 150. What does he say? It's going to rapidly steal the next, he's saying, 3 to 5 years, this simple high. The intelligence level of 1,000 IQs. You'll walk around half in your pocket, and people will have to evolve. And this is the thing we're in. What is I am doing? She look like we went from our physical ability to our mental ability, it's to your creative ability. And people will be hired on how creative they can be in using this new technological solution to create new ideas. And this, I think, very wrong. Being sitting there going, it's strange because I have a conveyor great top. And what Junkature does is, and I just want to give some background to this, right? So, people on the outside think Junkature is fashion competition. And it's not. Good day, but fashion is the challenge. But in some leadership building program, we have a future leaders network. And the way it works is the exact same way my life worked. As a kid in school, I was awful sport. Like I couldn't kick the ball, right? But because in school, you had to go sports. And I tried, and my heart, I just couldn't kick that ball. I was just, so I grew up as the local weird gay kid. But you kick the ball done well, you were gay straight away, right? So that was it. I know it's Joe and Gert had to find out what it meant. It wasn't happy, right? Because I was never happy. But at the same time, I was a very creative person. And then I remember my school time, the academic side of it, and told my parents he's doing numbers and he knows art because there's no money enough. So I had to go in the ground, right? And I'll tell you, for size 7s. I lasted 3 years in that, right? That was tough. But the thing was, Junkature was bored out of that. Was bored out of this thing of, I have a self-education really. Because I have 4 companies, and I don't have I have a music business, I have a digital marketing agency. I have no qualifications in any of those things, and I keep company. I remember being one time doing an interview for one of these companies, and we were interviewing different IT companies, and the first time you guys said, what degree have you got? And I got so in 70. Hey, I know, I picked it up along the way. So Junkature is that kind of idea. Challenge is create high fashion for trash. People think that's easy. But I've tried it myself. But now 15 years in, when I'm seeing the evolution of what these young people create, it's absolutely fantastic. And when you set somebody a challenge, put things happen, they'll experience failure, so they get back up again. They'll be pushed outside their comfort zone, because when they go to our shows, they're in front of 5,000 people screaming. And I see you kids before you will say, they're shaking. And we will be shaking the same way. And the other thing that happens to that then is they layer about themselves on a journey of self-education. So there's the challenge. There's no book. It's not like you sign up at any company warrant. Here's the pathway that you follow. Somebody at the end of the ACC will spam you and say, you're a cut. You used to find the home pathway there. So there's a massive layering about themselves and what they can do. And I see them when they come out the other end. You have these leaders that have creativity at the center. And then the biggest problem for the companies that are out there today is hiring the people, because how do you hire usual creative people? It's impossible. What creative people have to do? Break rules. They lie, they cheat, they break rules. I say to people like, what's the big problem with school and entrepreneurs? Schools don't like cheaters. But as entrepreneurs do, they find a way around the things. And if they cheat, it's like the same like I can cut the grass. I never cut the grass. I don't cut the grass again. I'll find another way to do that. So why layer them that bone in Irish? I'm gonna repeat that process. I'll find an easier way to do it. With somebody else that are for me.
So you're actually speaking my life. I was trying to say to myself, but then by now I realised my core skill is actually dodging.
It's your ear.
And the criminality is just about acceptable. No, I thought that's really John. I might come to you net. Like you, I could talk about. Obviously, you're coming from this area. That's obviously a way that organisations, let's be honest, absolutely have to adopt yesterday. And what does that mean to leaders? From an actual skills perspective, what does that mean to them?
This on. I'll get this. We're good. So look, I told Kouture, I think there's a whole other level of creativity that's required in my world in the world. So Clearstream, we're about 16 years old. We're part of Goodbody, it's part of B group. So we work on all of the classes. And that's them to be creative. There's a challenge.
Really thanks, Sarah. Just feel sorry for song. You said there's a care pack for you.
Well, in the share, but it's been our run. So we did a co-flakes, which is part of a focus organization. So we're looking for data, looking for information. We get them to pull disparate data across the business. We're looking for them to develop a sustainability strategy in the organization, to go and find data about their well-being of their employees. I'm really good at saying what is their revolution of waste of water and energy. Something they never up there before, and they create a financial statement. Unless you can read a financial statement, but it's a basic skill as a leader. You should be able to read your P&L and look at financial data. They've now been asked to produce a sustainability statement and have this all this non-financial data. So there's a whole skill set in this whole new language of sustainability. There's a whole language of the insight that fits. There's a whole suite of people that are trying to pull together the disparate information path for business, get the insight, and then share that with leadership team that they can make more informed, sustainability-related decisions, which they've never done before. Go back to we were working in the circular economy as one particular area. It's take and make, use, and we can lose. This whole circular economy, as an example, is asking us to reimagine our supply chain, to reimagine how many maybe customers and suppliers. We would see that look after carbon footprinting, setting targets, and the decarbonisation. So how are we going to drive emission out of our business? We didn't want people before. It's about upstream of our business. What are our suppliers doing, and how do they engage and educate our suppliers and push us out as customers? So there's a whole change going on with leadership, but actually you have to think holistically across the whole business, and don't repeat to the leadership. When you get into the world of decarbonisation, actually drive on shaping the business to eliminate emissions from how you buy stuff, how it's used, where you use it. You're bringing into creativity. You're asking people to stand back and innovate, to be creative, to pull together, to engage, to collaborate with people that you never have collaborated before. So separately is opening up these so sweet of new challenges, a whole new language, a whole set of opportunities, and risks. Climate adaptation is a big one. So I would be looking at our business from a narrow risk register, not contact twice. So there's a whole suite of skills, of language, of understanding, of new data, of collaboration. So the piece of legislation came out in the last couple of years where the CFO is now responsible for producing non-financial reports within the SIP. They remember this. That's the terror. So that's why they think they'll push back. They push it for 2 years. They've been focused on hold. So there's a whole suite of people that are now being asked to do something narrative. The skill is uncertainty, and we had a meeting yesterday with one organisation, a large financial organisation enabled for people, and they asked us for their for exec minus 1, exec minus 2, some training sessions, and the request was transformational climate leadership in turbulent times. Was do a training session 2.5 hours. How do we as managers or leaders manage and become transformational climate leaders in the turbulent time, challenging geopolitical, what's Trump, not changing our financial world. So there's this significant challenge that they're trying to address through training good interventions. So it's
and that's really fascinating. Both points is this. I'm going to say elevations and thinking more strategically.
Yes.
I was those used for a bit my role, but we mentioned the examples in the liquid innovation. I mean, it is so recently. So you have finally, developed the first hydrogen engine, and having a seen, but mass available hydrogen engine, run some hydrogen, you think that, comes out of these us as war keeper. Okay. What would have happened without legislation with the challenges that we're facing today? I think the precise change it was actually about 1960. So I think that link between strategic mindsets, disabled mindset, innovation is probably something for you think about, in the coming 10, 15 years.
I can add to it, we've about 150 active flights across all sectors, mainly needed in our organisations. You'd see about 30. But for them to be more consultative and educators is part of their role. They're not going to look at the data. They need to give the insight. They need to be able to consult, with the senior leaders of boards and executives and organisations and educate them. Because this is about bringing them on a journey. It's psychology. It's the understanding what the future is.
The thing that I see with the innovation part, right? So the current leaders, we're whole leaders and so we are organizational. We approach every problem about the lens that we have now, right? And that's the thing. So we look back, we bring all that together and go, okay, innovate on that, how to make changes. The reason one of our global partners is Deloitte, right? One of the reasons Deloitte partnered with Kouture is because the kids that we're working with do not have that past experience. So they approach the problem completely differently. And so you get this exposure to, and it's, I say people like Nebraska and Eagle, and Apple, because what happens is those ideas are crazy, and sometimes, Justin, your mentor, he listens to me on the highway. It's the crazy thing in the room to listen to, and that scares most people, right? Because it's the blockbuster thing. Netflix is sitting at the table, you would need that, that's silly, right? Because there are issues with bricks and mortar. And I think one of the things that, anybody that gets into a room to see a juncture competition, it shows around the world and see how approaching a problem completely different, like was an open mindset, beginner's mindset if you want to evolve it, and brings a completely different solution. A lot faster. It takes courage then as leaders to go, okay, I'm going to be down this pathway, even though most people think I'm silly. Because that's the other thing that entrepreneurs, as leaders, we get called all kind of silly idea. That's another, it's courage, right? It's going to be unknown.
The leaders is so with that mindset that they can for afraid of change, afraid of transformation, afraid of innovation.
Yeah, also be more manager bold. Yeah, accomplishing.
Or like come to nice.
Yeah.
Just talk back about, guys talk about sustainable innovation, creativity, skills, human side of things, right? There's a big, I would say, EU focus on actually becoming good at human skills. I would say it's all out of it, but it's all people necessary, fantastic output. So what's your take on the skills that we need to, try and get to the future?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think absolutely one of the things that strike you when you're both speaking is the impact of all of this on people and on humans. And I think with AI, which is inevitably not just common, is here, right? And we all are, I suppose, thinking about AI in terms of, we're talking about it. We may not have to implement it yet. We're wondering what it's going to do, what it's going to be like. But the fact of the matter is that without our people, we're not going to deliver anything. So I see AI, we also see AI as an extension, I suppose, to people's analytics. So it's going to be the extent to which people are able to work with AI. That's important. Not that AI is going to replace people in terms of how they need to do. So I think from a leadership perspective, the reason I'm saying what I think middle managers are critical is that I think they're pivotal to the change that is coming or is already here, right? So for example, the ethical considerations in terms of AI. So let's say you implement AI for claims process, for example. What you've got to be sure is that from an ethical perspective, that AI tool is making good claims decisions. So from a human perspective, what you need to put in place in your teams to make sure that works. I think from a people perspective as well, wherever you have AI and, the rapid advancing changes, the regulatory environments, et cetera, Like for our people, for example, you operate over 6 countries, right? So there's different regulatory changes in each of those countries. But what our people need to be able to do, when they do really well, is to be able to pivot and be agile and look at, okay, so, you know, what should we do to address regulatory change in one country? Then what are we going to do to address it in another country, right? In addition to that, I agree what's important from the well-being perspective is leading people through this change, right? And making sure that people are free, so freeing people with the abilities, and people are going to be anxious about this, right? And people have their own issues from day to day as well. So there's those sort of side issues that people have as well that need to be addressed. So like at CASI, for example, we put a lot of emphasis on well-being of our people. So we have our HASI here as well. You can kick it. It was actually an idea that came from our staff. Okay, and that's a program where we really focus on actually. You're joking about the risk registering, you know, what's the preference here? What's the prioritisation from a risk perspective? One of the things that needs to be measured actually is stress, you know, and people's ability to cope, how agile, and not agile, sorry, how they can deal with stress. So resilience is really important.
I think
Is it all for everyone?
which is already so it's very nice. They're interesting in top AI as an extension. So they're actually going a project with Future Orchestra at the moment where we're using AI either different projects through analyzing the type of language that people are using nowadays. It's a linguistic psychology. I was here as a layer up there. The kind of words that we use are actually the best precursor term that actually stressed me up. So often with the AI, you actually tell 3 or 4 months before your actual level of stress, a very second time that actually did see. So you probably may hear lots of stories, and many people, I think part of the stories of the field is that our stuff is actually out in there, so that the stress is built up like units. And not for it or sonic stress, and everybody actually stressed with boys. So because our units example of AI giving us new insights as human beings, you know, on our daily areas. Or they've had just a micro time that I'll cover a few things. I'm going to come to you first, probably, because I want to ask it to work perfect us. Okay, all of us are leaders here. I'm here just word resilience. It's from all over the place, and you know, probably comes from professional sports arena. You know, how do we build a level of resilience to keep us open, keep us buoyant, here to keep us at a level of performance and stuff, with all the failures. And I'm interested by your own personal perspectives on resilience. You've been through a few rodeos, and I'm interested in what you do to develop your own resilience. And I'm going to ask you at a broader level, you know, that supply chain level as well. And, you know, I think our other people that you would do that, some of the work you guys do on the space and resilience. So Troy, when I ask you about that, firstly, what you do to keep yourself up there? You'll strike it fully down, it's aggressive, but what's your sizes?
I'd say I went style for a bit time. Do you know, personal questions of each person answer the job?
I love men in our guys, so our questions.
No, that is right. So good thing. Issues and also, well, I was very bully as a kid, you know, like that's why that sport thing is so important to me. Like I just didn't fast. So like, if you think, and I didn't talk in public actually until 3 years ago. Like, and it's such an effect on the grip. It didn't speak in public, didn't do any interviews, and I just believed I wasn't good enough. And that's kind of what I was told. Well, all right, that's right enough. So, basically, that for me built some kind of thick skin, I call it, right? And it got me to a place where I could achieve 4 companies of madness, because also in the back of my head it said to me, no matter what I achieved, wasn't good enough. But some of the things that I did there over the last number of years, the first thing was I found an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization around 10 years ago, which was, I call it a business network, but it wasn't. I remember being in the first 4 meetings of that, and the whole thing was like talking about their fields. And I was like, first of all, what's he? Or a friend in the room and talk about fields. I about what's he? This is not possible. And 2 of them left, right? But that was one thing. So I found a community where I could share some of the things, right? And as well as that, then if I go further on that journey, you know, I ended up MIT with our organization doing masters. And I learned a lot about, you know, other people out there that own through a lot of different things. And one of the lessons that I got from that was that it was my own inner voice that was telling me like the So my inner voice or my lens, as I was calling it on, was built by, and everybody's lens is built by what other people tell us. What they tell us about ourselves. Sometimes it's onset. So for example, I'll give you one that was onset. But people used to come into my home when we were kids. There was I have one sister, two brothers. They were always mocked at my youngest brother and say, "Oh, he's so handsome." But by not saying that I was, I assumed that I wasn't. Right? And so those things live with you all your life. Right? And that's the lens that I always show up as I'm not gay and weird, I'm not handsome, you know, I'm talented, right? I did think a story about the night. I remember when I was in the
You come back rapidly bit from there.
and the boss man sent to me one day, right, come into the office, and he just said, like this is a non, that's why it is, like, you won't wear a suit, right? And I said, well, you're for a suit in the air. And I said, well, I'm buying it, but you're wearing it, so I have to wear a suit, right? But then it was so out of my comfort zone. But I think the biggest thing I learned through all this is the inner voice, so that lens, right? So I used to say this, what's up would go wrong for me? I'd say, it's you again, and people to rank. You're a failure, you're no good, if you screw up, you know, and that's the way I talk to myself. And, you know, I remember, I mean, I'd be a life coach, so I remember sitting down with her one day and try to analyze this. You know, I just took a lot of thinking and working, you know, to love myself. I think that's important with this person, right? To love myself, accept that I am who I am, right? And one of my things now in juncture is to celebrate difference. You know, my head is no one ever changed the world by being the same as anyone else. And that was the thing that I didn't see. And so what I started to learn was my biggest weakness was my biggest strength. And I remember I did a radio interview, it was a shock, and my PO and says, or to put it in interview, was something wrong with your head, because I've been employing them for 30 years. I know I'm Richard Curry, and this is the show. And I started talking about my wife handbags. Because they will handbags, right? I find my wife handbags. I was in New York, I think, first thing she said, don't bring me back handbag, right? Handbags and shoes. And I said there was nothing wrong with being a feminine man, right? And liking things that most people would have said, well, that's not masculine, you have to be the big, you know, strong person. I cried rubies, like, right, a million bowl. And my daughter will say, my wife, it's granny. This goes, oh wait, Cassini. Or lassie, sorry, you put a lassie on.
Oh, I'm not just not lucky was one cup.
So when we talked there, years with purpose, I think years of authenticity, and that was one of the things, even for me, in Joe Kouture was, I had to be the real me, and the real me is that kid who was vulnerable. You know, I call it, if I stood up and said that, everybody would leave the room. People go, oh my God, he's the kid we all did at school, right? Instead, that was different. People started to grasp on that. And when I did that interview with Richard Verna, I couldn't believe it, because I could say 70 grown men called or emailed or got my number or boxed me and said, I was that kid too, but I could never tell him. But what courage it takes to do that. And I couldn't believe myself. So I'm not courage, I'm just being me. But I can advise to anybody in the room, if you are talking to yourself in a negative way, and if anything goes wrong with your life, with relationships, work, whatever it may be, find somebody who can help you see the positives in you. Because the last 3 years I've changed that, and I have a little line or three that I say in where I love go for a walk in the morning that I believe, so it's easy for me to say it to myself. It changes my mood to me. So when a challenge comes in, I don't say, oh, that's another thing that you create another mess. And I'm like, no, I'm strong, I've got this. So that helps me out and say, big thing.
I could be slightly less personal. But I am interested in slightly offers in his organization for because again, you know, we're living in this constant change. We can't be the same thing every year as an organization. What do you see coming up? So you're working off the middle of this area at this moment in time, and it is a real word in your world. So this interesting, of course, G doing this.
Thank you for sharing, Troy. I am but noticed that I think I get you asked the still and stuff, and the leaders need some help, but they have voice and waves like that. So aspects. On an organizational level, this is kind of less and more boring. Mikey,
It's okay. How many accounts do you use those?
okay, so let me finish. Let's say we're an organization. There's so many different types of organizations. You know, the services-based manufacturing. There is small, the startups. There's 600,000 size companies. They all have different variations on resilience. You don't need people. I'm a firm believer in this BS and ESG, environmental and social governance. It is about people. And resilient organizations are run by people. You can look at resilience in terms of we can get access to raw materials. There's no human rights issues in our supply chains. We're not going to be, branded as evil or bad from the stuff that we sell. So there's a level of one to define the organization at a holistic level, and then what resilience needs to you as an organization. And it can be about, can we find people to work our business? Can we get them to stay? There's resilience in that. There's about how can you make more informed decisions about insights and data and the trends of change. How can we find people that are comfortable with that? How can we measure for competition? How can we unlearn the stuff that isn't serving as well? How can we have a culture of learning constantly in our business? Have we got the right purpose that aligns with the latest trends and the changes that are coming down the track? So there's a whole suite of resilience drivers that organizations are grappling with. That they all work together in tandem. Literally, to match together on stuff that makes you resilient. That is not one thing. It's different companies at different sizes and different levels of maturity will have a different take on resilience within. We're a company I started covering with Clearstream about 5 years ago. It was 4 of us to build 30. There's a different part of that business in terms of resilience. We're a bit of a lifestyle business. There's enough money going in or pay the bills and for a decent salary. Maybe the responsibility of working people's salaries, their mortgages, their ambitions, their vision, their future, what they're trying to achieve in their lives. So there's other challenges about maintaining that being a resilient business that's going to be here for the next couple of years. Giving people an opportunity to make it.
Or what comes to you, there's like, you mentioned the well-being program. Interesting that you're working that through your programs and you're expected to do some, your personal views and resilience.
Yeah, resilience is a really interesting question. I'm interested in what both of you said there. And back, as you can see, I have my films prepared. That's sort of way I work. So,
What shall I see?
no, but it is actually speaking by sort of fear of that. I have to, at 16 pages of oath here, right? Because I have to, build up my own confidence with step with things, right? So it's really accused of developing resilience, right? But actually, multiple analysis, I'm sort of throwing the notes at the winter now, Lord, because you're right, they take their eyes on these things, right? I saw the notes here, lovelies. No, but resilience, I think, is really interesting, right? And I think it's important to organizations, and leaders need to build resilience, but so does everybody in the organization. But to some extent, resilience does come from life experience, right? And learning to deal with failure or disappointment or upset or psychological problems or fear or those sorts of things that you're talking about as well. Something that resonates with me about what you said that actually I did help to build my resilience was, I used to be absolutely terrified of anything like this, public speaking, anything like that at all, right? And even as I was developing through my career, I get a promotion or something, and I'd be nervous about, oh, Jesus, making my head for a big goes and about, I was talking about me at this. And I read all of those going, spew the fear into it, and it was like every book that was out there, I read it, and I had little positive little anecdotes that would say to herself, look like you already were. Stuff I could tweet you. And I think probably that comes a bit from as well, like you're saying, like childhood as well. So, You know, my mother's a teacher, so like everything that I did at school, I would probably do it a bit better. My grandfather was a teacher, must try Marjorie, and I used to frequently get reports that say giddy in class, right? Which I don't regret. But, you know, couple that with, you know, the normal things that might happen to you in your lifetime or in your family or challenges, you know, that you have to deal with. I think that builds resilience. But in terms of teams, I think what's really important is that from a leadership perspective, that you allow people to try different things, that you're not afraid to try something and make a mistake. Like, failure shouldn't be punished as such. What you should do is, you know, try something. If it doesn't work, pivot, look at what you did, what you would do better, and try again. And I think that, I suppose, at Cassie, what we do say in terms of people, it's so we will seek like great place to work over 9 times in a row, right? The reason we've received that 9 times in a row is we pay attention to all of these things, right? We say to you, we want you to bring your whole self to work. Bring yourself. Don't bring a version of yourselves. Don't walk in the door and change to be somebody else. You know, so I think leaders being human, and some of the stories that you're telling, that we're telling today, it's really important. Like, at the end of the day, we're all the same, right? You know, we're all people coming to work with our various challenges, trying to do our best, trying to give our best. And I think to build resilience in organisations, leaders need to be really human, have emotional intelligence, emotional empathy. Don't be afraid to tell the stories as well about, you know, the things that you're finding challenging and share those. Because I think one of the things that we really focus on Cassie as well is partly in our environment of trust. And to be able to trust, and you know, trust can be broken so easy, but to be able to trust, people have to share and people have to be a little bit vulnerable. So I think all of those things have to build resilience, both individually and organisationally. And of course, you can do things like 360-degree feedback, all of that sort of stuff to help build resilience, but it has to be in an environment of trust for people to feel okay, to be able to learn and develop and grow and become resilient, and also to share some of the problems and situations that they have so that they can get support from their colleagues and people around them.
Can I add to that? If we're telling personal stories, I worked with Bairbre for 21 years on a variety of different projects and companies and so on. We've had some suspect leaders over the years of bosses that ultimately made us more resilient as human beings. But it was having a bully or somebody that you know, resilience on your own is challenging. But resilience with others, that you feel comfortable with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you know you can trust as almost like an inner circle that enables you to build your own internal resilience, that you feel confident. They give you confidence in yourself. Because they've got your back, you know, they might be your leader, you know, or just somebody that you can trust in your workspace that enables you to remind you that sort of you're a decent person that works hard, that has adds value. Just because your boss is suspect and sort of maybe isn't the most inspirational or let's just say not exactly your biggest advocate. I mean, so you build resilience to others that you can trust around you, that you need in the terms of work. You keep your customers happy or your clients or wherever you're working with satisfied. But then you suddenly go, I can't do that here. And then I can jump in, and that's a point in my life that I can pick my own leader or pick my own boss, and then if I want to work with, you don't know, it's not that choice. And so, you know, it is like experience. It's that hard to have somebody with you.
So basically, may open up to the question, but that's okay. And she's a core trend there. It was looking on my notes, they asked 4 questions. So we're very today. This is called Thanks very much. So there's one round of applause. The basic question to you on this is, can you select the mic?
Sure. Yeah, how are you hearing?
Essentially, quite a good deep, strong voice. Look me, you like for sure.
Hi, I run a company, Vegetable Souls, so I'm learning some of the issues about it as the company gets bigger. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, teams can be put together from a functional point of view of large businesses, but in terms of what you're talking about, the rate of change, the speed of change, how do you any comments in relation to putting together teams that are diverse, which may not necessarily be functional, but can deliver results. So that's one question. And the second quick question is in relation to identify people who are lonely in organizations and are in their own silos and getting them to reach out, how a large organization identifies them, cherishes them, and brings them on.
I take the first question out of know you at the Bairbre stage of those for organizations, so then finally be ready. But like that will be way open to. On the other one, your first question, we're a sailing organization. What I started to fishing with 5 people. Back 5 years ago, we first 20 years, and expanding, and the oldest person's 58, 59, the youngest person's 24. You have that variety of all ages. We have Libyan, 2 South Africans, Irish, English, Americans, and a variety of people across that sea. How they manage for change, they're all interested people, they're interested in other stuff. It's not just about the functional job that they come in to do, and they're all interested in the arts. Some of them are storytellers, and they do stage shows. We had a sample of Canada. They're musicians, they're artists, and they play sports. And so that the holistic person, and it's ensuring and encouraging that everybody's outside of their working life is nurtures, is enables, and this is about the job. We have a get together every quarter, and we do social things that it's create that team dynamic. But we have a leader in the organization that sees that, feels it, and they're trying to manage that culture. But as we're sailing, the challenge is that entrepreneurial spirit that is growing and growing business. We don't have an added process. We're now part of Goodbody, just 400 people per day, who just had 1,000 people. So they're asking us for coaching and returns and reports and this and so there's the damn process has been there and some entrepreneurial skills. So it's managing that contradiction, that conflict of process and entrepreneurship, and let's get on with it. For some of us, and other people don't show up the pounds you and that's a challenge, as you say, because it is managing that, with that managing process and numbers as much as the entrepreneurial spirit. So it's ensuring that that's the insanity of culture into my culture. That's hard as it's said, but it's reinforcing the country about how it goes.
Yeah, actually, if I can add to that, and thank you, very good questions about the cross-functional teams and the loneliness as well. So we have a lot of, we've been working cross-functional teams for various projects, for example. The one they don't particularly mention is it sort of type us that the loneliness geeks a bit, but also do cross-functional collaboration and working in teams. So we have a culture and values team in Cassie. In fact, 2 of my colleagues that are here are volunteers in our culture and values team. And our culture and values team is a team of volunteer employees who get together and work really hard. And they look after various things, like, for example, a lot of the events we would have around diversity and inclusion. So we would have things like, celebration national days. We would have flavors of Cassie, where people of our 25 different nationalities bring, some food that they baked or made from their own home country, and description of, we'd all get together in the kitchen to enjoy that day together and to chat, etc., etc. And we have type rugby, we have outdoor clubs, we have chess club, all sorts of interests, and then we have various wellbeing initiatives under our Cassie Herx program. We would frequently run things like mental health seminars. We recently had a Cassie Cares Wellbeing Week, where we had a whole array of wellbeing activities from, heartbeat screening to seminars on nutrition, on menopause, on wellness, on habits of sleep, on nutrition, and all of these type of things, right? So I think having these sort of cross collaborative groups where you're deliberately putting in place scenarios that people can come together can help to combat some of that loneliness thing, because I think it is a challenge in terms of hybrid working and remote working from home. Like, in some ways it's fantastic and there's a lot of benefits from it, and in other ways depending, of course, on, you know, whether people are extroverted, introverted, you know, a combination of anyway, since people have experienced a bit of isolation and loneliness. And I've read an article recently, actually, in Bairbre to me, it's around, it's an experiment that was done around having lunches, right? So basically, you know, a lot of you maybe use at their desk or whatever, or eat at home, maybe, you know, very quickly. But it was a social experiment done whereby they were putting groups of people together, you know, saying go out and have lunch, and then measuring sort of, you know, the output of that and the impact of that. And one of the things that the survey sort of showed was actually eating together or sitting together, you know, is a good thing to do. That people actually normally would report afterwards that it was a positive experience. Of course, it pointed out that it turns out you're in the type of weight, you know, and how you're engaged together very well, that's up to them. But the conclusion sort of was, even if you don't have time for the lunch, 10 minutes for a coffee or getting together can really have a positive impact. So I think, to sort of, from a mental health perspective, we were trying to make mental health normalised in the workplace as well. So to train managers at teams to sort of look out for the signs that might be there. We obviously have, you know, we have our employee assistance program, all of that's sort of big as well. But another thing, I suppose, that we do, just to mention one finally, because it works very well, is we have a HASI away day every year. And we work in collaborative teams around the away days. So, for example, each team or combination of teams will put together a video every year as part of the away day. And this year is when forging our future, actually very apt in terms of what we talked about today. So we'll ask the teams to do that, something creative, you know, something humorous depicting what the future might look like, a time capsule, what your team looked like in 2020 or 2030, for example. And teams have a lot of fun together, you know, putting those things together. Of course, at first, as if someone will go and put their video there on top for everything else. But it's always worked for the happens. And then on the days, of course, people love looking at the videos. They meet new people, they have a bit of fun together. Oh, that is really important as well. So I hope that helps.
There's Mitch, one more question. So,
yeah, just this question and a challenge that I hear of a lot from leaders with my industry, the finance sector, is the balance of managing shareholder expectations compared to stakeholder expectations. Using your voice to be able to share on that point.
I can take that we're all that stakeholder, but shareholders. In the world of sustainability, sustainability can be a dirty word in organisations and industry. We like to call them resourceful businesses, and I didn't become resourceful as broader stakeholders as do shareholders. So shareholders are a subset of stakeholders, but nature's shareholder, a stakeholder, as much as employees are stakeholders, as much as investors and the people that are making financial gain as shareholders. So, you know, the future of businesses is driving for the full stakeholder engagement. It's mapping out all of this impacts, risk, opportunities across your business, engaging all those stakeholders, so you can actually have a much more holistic approach to creating resilient business. And the shareholders just being one voice of that financial benefit. The total cost of businesses and the impacts that they have on businesses covers all stakeholders. If you just narrow shareholders, you're missing, you know, huge amounts of inputs and voices to actually design to business. So hopefully that's gives you an answer.
okay, guys, we're going to come to the end of the session. So another round of applause for thank you.